Welcome to the Aramir Roundtable. Today is the day after Christmas, Boxing Day 2018, and my guest is Mark Ansel with the Night Owl. So welcome, Mark. Nice to have you back.
Thank you for inviting me back.
Oh, of course. Before we get too far into this, our normal disclosure, and you can see Mark has it scroll down to the bottom of the website, which is where you'll find all of these, that Aramir is not a broker-dealer or investment advisor. This is for educational purposes only. Options involve risk and are not suitable for all investors, so are futures. And past performance is not indicative of future results. And if you want to read the whole thing, just go to the bottom of our webpage and read away. So with that, Mark, this is kind of part two of your Night Owl presentation. I guess had a kind of good example you were telling me before we started about the euro today. So I guess like last time, I'll be on mute. I'll be here, but I'm going to just be in the background, and so there's no interference. But if there's a question or something, I'll pop in.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Tom.
Okay.
Okay, welcome everyone to part two of the Night Owl Advisory Service presentation. Today, I'd like to go into detail about the price arrays that I post every evening that make the Night Owl recommendations. I'm looking at the posts that I made last night for the euro. There actually were two. One that I posted a little bit, like a few minutes after 6 p.m., right after I got the opening price, which, let's see if I can remember how to use these tools. The opening price goes here. And once I have that, I made the post. Around maybe 15 or 20 minutes after the hour, I discovered that I had overlooked one of the factors that Night Owl uses. Bear with me, I'm trying to figure out how to clear that circle I just drew. Okay, so that now I can scroll up.
I probably need to close the annotate mode. Exit out.
There we go. Okay, there we go. So that's the reason for the updated post. For some subscribers, I guess, I think everybody got the first one. I don't know if everyone got the second one. I know one person who did not. So that's the reason we have two euro posts. The original was for the long side, and the corrected one, or the updated one, was for the short side. And as Tom and I were discussing before the presentation began, it's kind of an interesting situation because the short side reached delivery, and now the long side is just a few ticks away from delivery. So I'm now using Night Owl terms, and I need to pause for a moment to explain what these terms are. Let's step back for a moment and discuss briefly what it is that Night Owl is telling us. Night Owl is a creation of mine that I began developing in the year 2011. And it's essentially a conglomeration of many different ideas that I've drawn from several sources over the years, things that have worked for me. At the centerpiece of Night Owl is a price table that I developed nearly 20 years ago, based on the ancient Egyptian concept of the square of 9. W.D. Gann came along almost 100 years ago and kind of popularized the concept of the square of 9 for the traders of his day. And he often gets credit for creating it, but it actually goes back centuries. The pyramids were built using the square of 9 before the days of logarithms. Be that as it may, in about the year 2001 or so, give or take, I don't remember exactly when, but it was around 2001 when Windows XP and Office XP first came on the market in that fall. I wrote an Excel spreadsheet that calculated square of 9 values starting at 0 and going up a little bit beyond 150,000. The reason for that was I could, without regard to the placement of the decimal point in those calculations, I could use the digits to identify where markets are likely to turn, because markets tend to turn on square of 9 numbers. And when I say ignoring the digit, the actual, here, let me get my annotation thing on the, okay, Tom, I'm going to need your help because now that menu is completely gone.
You got to put your mouse up to the top, and then
okay,
the middle.
I only see my own. Here, I'm going to ask you to do it. Would that be quicker? Instead of fumbling around, I'm going to ask you to circle something.
Yeah, I think.
I don't have any.
Okay, I have my annotation thing open, so I should be able to annotate.
Maybe do I need to go all the way to the top? No, because I just don't see it. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Anyway, I was just going to circle a number at random. Just circle any number in the price table at random. Just
okay,
anything.
here's one.
Okay. When I say it's without regard to the decimal point, the actual number is 114790. The square of 9 number, 114790. For use with the euro, I put the decimal point where it is because that's how the euro is priced. If this were the S&P of what, 10 years ago, give or take, the decimal would go 3 digits to the right as 1147.90, or rounding it up to 1148. So that's the unique characteristic of the square of 9, is that you can use these numbers, put the decimal point where it needs to be with respect to the pricing of any given market you're working with. In the case of crude oil, where it's down in the 40s now, those actual numbers would be, again, ignoring the decimal point, they would be in the 400,000s. And we put the decimal point over 4 places to the right to position it just so that we can read the square of 9 number as a price. Okay, beyond that, the square of 9 is something that I wrote into the Excel spreadsheet almost 20 years ago and have used it in trading every futures market I've ever traded, which is about 15. When I began developing Night Owl in 2011, I brought the square of 9 price table over with me. And like I said, it's the centerpiece of Night Owl. So we have the square of 9 as a piece of information that Night Owl provides us. Night Owl's purpose, the two, well, I'll say the three pieces of information that we need from Night Owl to be successful in trading. First of all, we need to know the direction. So Night Owl's number one calculation every night is to determine the direction that it wants to play. The definition of predicted direction is which side of a market, long or short, does Night Owl think will get to target C first? That's target Charlie. That's its purpose. Which one is going to get there first? Now, today in crude oil, we got to the short side of target C first, so Night Owl got it right. Since then, crude oil has completely turned around and gone almost to target G, to the upside. So and days like that will happen. But again, I emphasize, Night Owl's purpose is to identify as best as it can, is to predict, in other words. Its purpose is to predict which side of a market will get to target C first. Once it gets to target C, Night Owl is done for the day because it accomplished what it was trying to do. So that's the first piece of information it provides to us. It predicts with an historical accuracy of a little under 80%. We're at Aramir, we're at 76%. With 76% accuracy at Aramir, with an historical accuracy a little bit higher than that. Which side is going to get to target C first? The second piece of information it provides is, what if it's wrong? What if Night Owl is wrong? How do we define when we are wrong? This is something I have observed over a period of several years, and it seems very consistent regardless of the market that we are evaluating. Most of the time, when volatility is at normal levels, the market will go in the night owl direction with that close to 80% accuracy, provided that the stop is 6 price levels behind the closing price from the previous day. So taking a look at, and I've got in front of me the short side of the euro for last night. I'm really sorry I don't have this annotation menu on my screen anymore. I have no idea how to bring it back. But taking it, Tom, if you can see where I've got my arrow pointing, it's pointing at last price. Okay, so just looking at this, Night Owl is providing us 2 pieces of information on this table, which are noted with a little tilde signal where the arrow is now, yes. And then a couple lines further down is the at line. The at line is the desired limit-based entry. The tilde line is if the market goes in the Night Owl direction almost immediately, what do we do in that case? We'll get to that a little bit more in a few minutes. The stop, as I was saying a moment ago, the stop is, with roughly 80% accuracy, will be 6 levels. Each line is a level. 6 lines or 6 levels behind the better of the closing price, 1503, which is where my arrow is now, or the opening price, 1495. Well, on the short side, 1503 is the better price. So the at symbol goes at the first line beyond that, 1506. Now, Night Owl has a few exceptions that did not pertain last night, and sometimes you may see a situation where, just using this as an example, the last price of 1503, but the at may be at 1512. It might even be at 1517. There are certain rules that are built into Night Owl to back that off. None of those pertained last night. So it was the general case of the at line going on the first line beyond the better of the 1503 or the 1495. Okay, so 6 lines beyond that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 lines is 1540. That's the stop. With roughly 80% accuracy, if market is going to go down, it will go down before it gets to that 1540. So, and I will talk about fading that in a little bit. 1543 would be the number that I would use for the stop, and did. So that is the general case. With roughly 80% accuracy, Night Owl is telling us that it will go short, but Night Owl will be wrong if we get to 1543, the faded 6th line beyond the at symbol. Okay, so those are 2 of the 3 pieces of information. The third piece of information actually is more up to us as the trader. We know the direction Night Owl wants to play. We know where Night Owl says where it says it will be wrong at 1543. But we have these lines in between. We have the at line and we have 5 other lines in between. So we can use any of these lines for entries. They're all valid for entries. The at symbol simply represents the first one for the most aggressive traders, for the trader who needs to be active, who wants a play every day, that Night Owl recognizes an opportunity. That's the at symbol. The at symbol is the most aggressive of the plays in the array. The most conservative play in the array, the one where you're taking the smallest amount of dollar risk, is the stop line. Because if you think about it, if we are fading with a 3-tick fade on the stop, as I recommended last time, and a 2-tick fade on the entry, which I also recommended last time, you've actually got an entry here, a short of 1538, 2 ticks in front of the square of 9 number, and a stop of 1543, 3 ticks behind the square of 9 number. So that is your most conservative play. You're risking, in this case, 5 ticks. And for those people who did not get the notification of this update, They were looking at this price array last night for the euro, where the at was at 14.91 and 6 lines behind is 14.56. Well, again, using the night owl rule of 3 ticks on a stop, that stop would have been 14.53. Well, how far did the market go against the long side? It went to 14.55. Without fading, you would have been stopped out. With fading, you would have stayed alive, and you would have had this fabulous entry because this is now in play. So it's an interesting situation where night owl is right on the short side, but it also was right on the long side. So for anybody who did not get the notification of this update, which again, I went on the site last night sometime around 6:30 Eastern time, and only knew about this, because I believe when these things go to the phone, you only get a notification of it, and whereas the email, as I recall, provides the actual setups.
Correct.
Okay, so for anybody who for whatever reason didn't get the notification of this this update and played the long side, if you faded your stop, not only did you not get stopped out, but you're now in this situation where you've got the best entry there was. The 1450 faded would be 1459. Correction, 1458, 2-tick fade. 1458. I didn't play this side because I mean, of course I knew about the update. I'm the one who posted it. So I was actually on the short side and got to the target C that we got to, which I don't remember now what it was, but I guess I have it up here, 1456. Here I've scrolled away from that too fast. That's what this is telling us, that we got to profit C, target C at 1456. So night owl was done. It took the short entry. It came off of the tilde. And again, I'll talk about the tilde and the at in just a moment, so bear with me. But it took the entry at 14.99. Target C for 14.99 is 14.56. Once the market got to there, night owl's prediction was correct. We got to target C on the short side first. Okay, I've talked about the at. That's the aggressive entry. I've talked about the stop line as being the most conservative entry, defining conservative as the smallest amount of dollar risk you're taking, which again in this case would have been 5 ticks. But what is this tilde? The tilde also came into play last night because the euro started the session going down. What the tilde tells us is if a market gets to the faded tilde price before it gets to the faded at price, then the tilde play comes into effect. The tilde becomes the active entry. What does that mean? It means that, and again, I'm fading. With a 2-tick fade in front of that tilde line, if market gets to 14.97, then night owl tries to short this fade also at 14.97. I don't like having the fade exactly the same for each one. So when that happens, and this is just Mark Ansel, now this is how Mark does it, I want the extra 2 ticks. So if it gets to 14, and this is what we did, if it gets to 14.95, then we'll take 14.97. Okay, that's kind of an unusual case where the faded price for the tilde line is going to be exactly the same as the faded price for the entry line. But when that happens, you know, I mean, there's nothing wrong in saying, okay, when it hits 14.97, we'll go short at 14.97. I mean, that's the essence of a stop limit order. But in my case, I just prefer to take the fade off of the tilde, and still, it just allows a little more room. I'm not going to say it's right or wrong, it's just how I do it. But that's the difference between the tilde and the at. The at is the desired limit price that we would prefer to see. The tilde is the price that we will work from if market goes in the night owl direction without even retracing to the at line first. And the tilde, you can use the tilde as an entry if you want to, because remember, as I have said, every number in the array is an actual square of 9 price. So there's nothing that says you cannot take 14.95 on a stop limit, then you're, or even a stop. I mean, if you take it on a stop, for sure you're in the trade. I do prefer to enter all my trades on limits. I'm controlling my slippage that way. And that's the reason that I have the line in between the tilde and the at, saying that, well, if the tilde line gets hit, then I'll try to get the at line on a limit. Okay, so that's the difference between the at and the tilde, and that's that third piece of information that Night Owl provides us. It provides us with an entry. It provides us actually with all these different entries. I don't recommend that Night Owl subscribers should take an entry off of every line. If you are trading your own money and you are trading at least $250,000, then playing a 3 lot on the at and an additional lot on every line to the stop line can make sense. But if you're trading for the bank, first of all, the bank is going to limit you to 3 contracts when you start. Eventually, they will loosen that up and they'll let you go up to 12. But when you are at 3 contracts, the question is, well, how do you distribute the 3 if you've got 7 lines? And my recommendation is, and this is how I trade for the bank, put all 3 of them on the at line. There is a temptation, and a subscriber emailed me a few days ago asking if he could do this. And of course, yes, you can do it. I'm not telling you that you must do it my way. That's the beauty of the price array. Depending on what your own tolerance for risk is, you may want to put your first entry here on line number 3, or here on line number 4. Again, and if we're using line number 4, with a fade entry of 22 and the stop of 43, you're only risking 21 ticks. So, you know, you could instead of playing 3, put 5, and you've got about the same dollar amount of risk. I actually did that last night with my crude oil trade on the short side, and I can talk about that here in a moment. Well, there's no problem. I guess we can. Oh, that's on a different screen. Sorry. Let me change screens real fast, and I'll get to the crude oil to show you what I'm talking about there. I don't know if the subscribers could have done this because there is a time lag between the time that I get this opening price of $42.85 and the time that the array actually shows up on the site. By the time I had this $42.85 and I identified the at line, you can see the at for crude oil last night was at, sorry, trying to just highlight that. The at line for the crude oil was 43.07. By the time I got that posted, market was already between 43.15 and 43.30. It was in between those 2 numbers. So here I am sitting at my platform. I'm selling the market because I'm already beyond the at line. So I'm just selling the market on my 3 contracts. One got filled at 18, one at 20, and I think the third one was 17. Anyway, the point is, with the stop down here at this value, 43.72 plus the fade, which is designed to be the stop for 3 entries on the at line, and my 3 entries were between 43.15 and 43.30, I actually had less risk on my play than usual because my average entry of 43.17 was 10 cents better. So I decided, okay, the market went up to here at the time. And when I saw that, and I just happened to be at my desk and I saw that, and it was around 43.35 at that time, I thought, well, I've got less risk at play than I usually take because the usual risk is $1,200 or $1,300. Well, why not take an extra entry? I put in my limit order 43.30 to assure the fill, which I got because it was at 32 or 33 at that time. And then I just played to a target A. So again, that's the beauty of these arrays. They give you square of 9 numbers to use as entries and targets. In that case, by putting that 4th contract on there, it put my overall dollar risk at the usual amount, but it gave me an extra contract to play with. And so I took a fairly conservative trade because target A gets hit close to 80% of the time. So, why not go for the extra 20 to 30 cents that target A offers me? So that's what I'm talking about, that there is no one right way to do it. But for those who have to play 3 contracts, my recommendation is to put them on the at line. If you have the ability to play more, or if you've been trading for the bank for a while and they've loosened up and allowed you to trade more contracts, then you can use 1 or 2 of these entries as what we call sachets. The sachet is a supplemental entry. It's going to be always between the at up here and the stop down here. The sachet entry is simply saying, take the entry and go for target A. Now, the classic night owl rule, which is great in concept, but difficult to program for those of you who want an automated setup. The classic night owl rule always has said, when you have a successful sachet, you can back off your stop. So in this case, you would back it off from the 43.72 line to the 43.82 line. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually in the rules of night owl, but as a practical matter, I don't do it because it's a challenge to program. It's also a challenge when night owl is going in the middle of the night and one of these sachet entries elects, correction, one of the targets A elects for the sachet, and you're half asleep and you have to come out to your platform and be sure you get the stop right. You put it in the right direction. You go here instead of here. I mean, there are so many issues in backing off the stop with a successful target A. I just took the practical approach and said, the heck with it. I'm just going to keep the stop as it is. And so as a practical matter in my trading, that's what I do. But if you want to be absolutely 100% within the rules, every time you get a successful sachet, you can back off that stop to give you a little more room. It's called buying a stop. All right. So we have talked now about, excuse me, we have talked now about the meaning of the at line, the desired limit price. We've talked about the tilt line, what to do if market immediately goes in the night owl direction. By the way, this was a case where in the night owl rules, it did back off the entry price because you can see for the short side, the higher of the close at 68 and the open of 85 was 85. So normally, night owl would have put the at here because the normal circumstance is to put the at on the first line beyond the better of the last price and the open price. So that first line is 42.97. But night owl had actually 2 rules that came into play. One of them, again, it's a proprietary calculation, but what it's looking for is the degree of strength in the retracements in the previous session. And I don't have, well, I guess I don't have the chart in front of me. That's actually on a different computer. If you can look at a crude oil price chart on Christmas Day, you will see that towards the end of the day, crude oil dropped like a rock, and there was almost no retracement at all. Once it finally hit the bottom, which was down in the 42 somewhere, it retraced very little. Night owl is using that piece of information as a percentage, and when that information, when that calculation is extremely small, there is a rule in night owl that says back off the at from the normal place, which would be 42.97, 2 lines beyond, which would be 43.15. There is another rule in night owl that says when you have a continual recommendation, which we did, a short continual, we can add back one of those lines that we backed off, and that's why the at is here. Now, this is not something that I put into the nightly post simply because I have to trade too, and there's just not enough time to put all this. Well, why is the at on this line instead of on that line, kind of thing. So you have to go with whatever you see. If I've put the at line more than the first line beyond the better of 42.85 or 42.68 in this case. That's not just arbitrary. There's something in the rules telling me to allow some room before Night Owl takes the limit entry. In other words, Night Owl is expecting some volatility around the open, like we had last night and like we almost always have on Sunday night. Sunday night opens are the most challenging because there's almost always high volatility right around that open. All right. If we are not going to follow the classic rule of backing off our stops, and if we recognize that Night Owl gets it right with the first target C to elect, if we don't want to have to keep getting up during the night, adjusting our targets to target C, because every time we get a new entry that elects, we have a new target C. And the rule is the first target C that elects. Well, in last night's case, after the at, we had 3 more entries elect. That one, and it has a different target C. See, it's 35 cents instead of 22.5. This one elected, and it had a target C of 45, and this was the ultimate one that elected. And so therefore, in following the Night Owl definition of delivery, if this is the final entry before the first target C, well, this would be the first target C because it's the closest of all 4 that were possibilities. This is where delivery occurs. Well, we don't really, I mean, I guess I'm speaking for myself here, but I think it's safe to say that Night Owl subscribers don't want to have to set price alerts or sound off alerts every time one of these lines elects, so they have to get up and adjust their platform to the new value of target C. You're not going to get a whole lot of sleep if you do that way, and then you may make other mistakes. So as a practical matter, what do you do? Well, here, let me go back to the euro, because this was the one that I was planning on using anyway. But I mean, it's universal. I mean, this is the way you do it no matter what market you're in. This was the entry, the 14.99. What do we target? Think about this for a minute. Target C is delivery. That means Night Owl has completed its job. Its job is to identify direction that it thinks market will reach target C first. But target C is not necessarily, in fact, it's not the average result when Night Owl gets it right. The average win is more than target C. The average win, well, I'll back up a little bit. First, let's talk about the average number of lines to elect. The average number of lines to elect is this one. So the third, if you want to play the averages, because remember I said the at is the most aggressive, the trader who wants to feel active every night or who has a psychological need to be active every night, he plays the at line. If you want to play the averages of 7+ years of Night Owl history between the at and the stop, and I didn't put the separation in, but this is the stop right here. So you've got these 7 lines. The average entry occurs on line number 3. The average result, the average win, I should say, not result. I've got to be careful with my wording here. The average win is target D from line number 3. So, given that piece of information, if you want to take the at line because you're trading for the bank and you've only got 3 contracts to play, and Mark Ansel said if you've only got 3 contracts to play, the smart thing to do, the high money play, is to play the at line. Well, if the average win is target D, this number right here, coming off of the 3rd line, That number is not on this line. So what do? This is one of the cool things about the price array. Look at this. Every third line, you're going to get repeated numbers. Target C for the line that I've just highlighted is target D for the third line. It's target E for the sixth line. If I had the ninth line, it would be target F, and so forth. That's how these arrays always work. So, in lieu of getting up every time a new entry elects to adjust your platform to the new value of target C, I suggest, in order to get more sleep and yet play the at line with your 3 contracts, now that you know that the average win comes off of the third line at target D, and that happens to be target C for the line above the at, this is what I do. With my 3 contracts for the bank, you can either put all 3 of them on target C, nothing wrong with that, or what I do is I put one at this B, one at this C, and one at that D. That way, if market goes beyond, if a market A is going in our direction and B, it's going strongly in our direction, I'm going to get a little more. But if we don't get to delivery, and maybe if market turns around even before it gets to target C, meaning Night Owl got it wrong, I've still got an exit fairly close to my entry of, well, if it's the outline, it's 1506. It's only whatever that difference is, 20, what is that, 33 ticks? Yeah, 33 ticks away. You know, that's not quite target C. Target C usually is around 40 to 45 ticks, but it's a reasonable exit. It's a safe play, so that if I take one of my contracts off here and then market turns around and goes to the stop, I've only got 2 contracts left. So I've reduced my amount of risk. I can't say I've minimized it, but I've reduced my amount of remaining risk. If it hits the stop, I get stopped out on 2 instead of 3, and instead of a $1,200 loss because of the profit I took at target B for the first of my 3 lots, I'm looking at a loss of maybe $400. So it's certainly a palatable loss, and nobody at the bank is going to be screaming, you know, what's the matter with you? You took a loss today. It's a small loss. So to my mind, that's the smart way to play the array. Now, again, we've got all these rows. We've got all these square of 9 numbers. There are tens of thousands of possible combinations for how to play the arrays. So let's summarize here what we've talked about today. Night Owl predicts market's going to go down, so it gives us a short signal, or it predicts market's going to go up and it gives us a long signal. That's the L or the S that we see in the array. And also I have it here, short reversal. So that's information piece number 1. Information piece number 2 is Night Owl says, if Night Owl is wrong, the stop needs to be 6 lines beyond the at. And the at is usually the first line beyond the better of the last or the open. And again, if I've backed it off, Night Owl has a reason for backing it off, but be that as it may, 6 lines beyond the at is the stop. And in between those 2 lines, we have 5 other lines. These 5 other lines all provide entry opportunities. If you've got a sizable account, it's perfectly valid and probably smart to play the sachets, taking an entry on each line and targeting the target A. It's a high percentage play, and every time that happens, you're taking little chunks out of the market so that if market ultimately turns around and goes against you, you have reduced your risk somewhat. Every once in a while, you'll get a day where it'll be so choppy, you can get each of these targets A, and by the time market stops you out, if it does, you may still have a profit. Every once in a while, that does happen. But again, I have to emphasize, if you're trading a small account Or if you're trading for the bank and you only have 3 lots, don't try to trade these. If you want to go with the average overall night owl determinations, again, the average number of entries is 3. Sometimes there will only be 1. Sometimes, like today on the long side of Euro, all of them elected. All these lines elected today, all 7 of them. The ultimate entry was on this line, faded at 58 with a stop at 53. So only 5 ticks of risk. But if you want to play the average is line number 3. So there's nothing wrong with putting your stop, putting your limit entry at the 15.17 if you don't want to fade. If you want to fade, which I highly recommend, 15.15. And the stop at the 15.43, 3 ticks behind that entry price there. And the average win is from the 3rd line, target D. If you're playing this line number 3, you're good to go. I mean, you can put all your targets, you can put all your exits on target D, knowing, well, that's the overall average, or you can spread them out, C, D, and E, or maybe you want to put 1 at B, 1 at D, and 1 at F. I mean, again, there are literally thousands of ways of doing this. If you put it at F, of course, you've got less likelihood of getting there because now you're talking about a move of 94 ticks. But if it does get there, you've got a nice big win. And if you're trailing a stop, which we'll talk about here in just a second, that's also a smart way to go. But again, if you have limited resources, if you're trading a small account, or if you're trading for the bank, especially if you're a new trader for the bank and they haven't loosened you up yet to more than 3 contracts, the thing that makes the most sense, take the at line with 3 lots and use the line immediately above for your targets, because this 56 happens to be the same 56 that is the average overall win coming off of line number 3. And if you put 1 contract on either side, you're taking into account, well, what if night owl is wrong? Getting to 73 from 1506 is a higher percentage than getting to 56 from 1506. Because after all, the closer the target, the higher the percentage of success. So this is a fair way to do it, to spread them out. If you have a big enough account and you can play multiple lots, then I advise trailing a stop. Do it in multiples of 3. So if you've got an account where you're trading 3, take off 2 at the lettered targets, trail a stop on the 3rd one. The next multiple would be 6. If you're trading 6 lots, take off 2 at 1 lettered target, take off another 2 at the 2nd lettered target, and trail your stop on the last 2. How do you trail a stop using the price array? This is how I do it. I begin trailing stops at B. I will use C because C is the delivery. By the book Night Owl, it should be C, but it's not necessarily wrong to start doing it B, but I'll do C and we'll stay on the rules here. When market gets to this 1473, Tom, my annotate menu just came back. I have absolutely no idea why, but it just came back.
Oh, okay, great.
I don't know why. I mean, it just suddenly appeared on my screen.
Oh, by the way, Dan is here.
Okay. Dan, don't go away. At the very end of the presentation, I've got a question for you. Okay. So, if you have the resources to trail a stop, trailing should begin at target C. This is how I do it. Remember I said a few minutes ago that every 3rd line, the numbers reappear? So target C, the one that I've highlighted, which again is coming off of the average entry, the 3rd entry, the 1473 in this case, that's going to be target D, 3 lines down. 1, 2, 3, there it is. To trail a stop, And then every time market hits a new number, a new square of 9 number, go through this exercise again. This is how Night Owl trails its stops. When we hit that square of 9 number, 1473 in this case, count backwards 3 letters, 1, 2, 3, and then down 1. So the new stop is now 1530, or with a fade, 1533, 3 ticks added on. Okay, then when market gets to the next letter, price, do the same exercise. If we are here, for example, if market gets here, go backwards 3, 1, 2, 3, and then down 1. Now the stop is 1513, plus 3 ticks, 1516. When it gets to here, I mean, now you've got a great trade going on, and you want to be sure you keep your stop wide enough to allow for the increased volatility we have. Keep your trade alive. Favor the trade. That's a fundamental philosophy of mine, is to favor the trade. Don't choke it. So, because again, remember, Night Owl has shown over a 7-year history that so long as you keep 6 levels, I almost said SON, square of 9, that's referring to each level. Each level is a square of 9 number. But for every time a market reaches a new lettered target, keep that stop 6 levels behind. So to determine quickly where it should go, count back 3 targets, 1, 2, 3, and down 1, 1496. Plus 3 ticks, 1499. That is the Night Owl way of trailing a stop. Once we get late into the day, then you can tighten that up. Instead of counting back 3, count back 2. So if we're late in the day, like it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and you have to be flat by 4, then it makes sense to start tightening your stop. Go back 2 and down 1. So now we've advanced it from 1496 plus 3 ticks to 1479 plus 3 ticks. At 330, only go back 1 and then down. So now it's tightened from the 79 plus 3 ticks to 61 plus 3 ticks. That's how I do it. That's the Night Owl way of trailing a stop. Again, depending on your risk tolerance, you can count back 4 targets. You can count back 2. You don't have to drop down the additional line. Again, there are thousands of ways of doing this. The price array gives us the numbers. Use the configuration of numbers that you're most comfortable with, because everyone's risk tolerance is different, and I have no way of knowing that in a population of subscribers whose risk tolerance is what. So I'm showing you the way I do it, the way Night Owl does it. I developed Night Owl, so I've put my own trading psychology into what I've told you today. But if you feel, if I'm just going up a little bit to give a little more room, if you feel that counting back 3 from say 1450, putting a stop at 1507, if that's just too wide for you, well, it's not wrong to count back 2 and go down 1, or even just count back 2 and not go down at all. There are so many combinations you can do. But of course, keep in mind that the closer that stop is to the market, the more likely it's going to get hit. And what do you do if market hits it and then goes back in the Night Owl direction? Because Night Owl has shown over 7 years that so long as in the way I'm doing it now, with 3 targets behind and 1 tick down, or correction, 1 line down, if you do it that way, that stop almost never going to get hit. And if it does get hit, market very likely is just going like gangbusters in the other direction now, which is what happened today with crude oil. That's a nice little way to do a reversal, by the way, if you want to play reversals. The same thing. Use your stop as your reversal entry. And if we will use this as an example, because this did not happen today, so I'm just going to make this up. If market had gone down to 1450, and you had put the stop at the Night Owl place, which is 1507, and let's say that stop gets hit, and then market retraces, well, you have the square of 9 numbers. This 1507 for a short is a buy, right? Well, on the long side, there's the same 1507. And after hitting this 1507, if market goes down a little bit, you can take the, you can take the 1500, you can take the 1496. You know where these entries are because they're in the arrays that we post every day. These numbers, folks, do not change. They have been the same since I calculated them in my Excel spreadsheet almost 20 years ago. They're the same numbers that the Egyptians calculated thousands of years ago without the decimal points that were their calculations. I've just put the decimal points in so that we can use these numbers as prices, because I'm not the only trader out there who does this. Dan is in the group. He's in Chicago. He knows floor traders from the day when the pits were active. Floor traders by the score were using square of 9 numbers for their entries and targets and stops. And many of those floor traders are still trading on the internet today. And some of those traders trade for big banks and are trading sizable, they're trading 50 lots on a line. And they have the size to turn markets on these numbers. That's why markets so often turn on square of 9 numbers, because there are traders who recognize the power of the square of 9, and they are trading huge size on these numbers. That, by the way, is the reason to fade your entries, because they're going to front run you. They know, using this line as the example, they know the square of 9 numbers, 1491. Well, they don't want to miss that, because their colleague, if they're at Merrill Lynch, their colleague at Goldman is playing the square of 9, and the colleague doesn't want to miss, so he's going to go long at 1493. And if you're sitting there at 1491 and somebody with a bigger account than yours, account that's so big they can turn a market, they're at 1493, you're going to be left on the platform. You just missed the train. I don't like missing trains. That's why I fade my entries by 2 ticks. I recommend you do the same. That's why I fade my targets by 3 ticks. I recommend you do the same, because you're a little less likely to get nicked on a stop, like today. If you had played the pure square of 9 number for your stop, you'd have gotten stopped at 56, market went to 55, and then took off. You see what I mean? How these square of 9 numbers, so often, it's just amazing. I mean, 20 years later, I'm still in awe of this, that markets turn on these square of 9 numbers. If you don't fade, and other traders out there with bigger accounts than yours are fading, you're the one who's going to get stopped out. And they faded like I did at 53, and they didn't get hit, and the market took off. So that,
hey, Mark, there's a quick question. How
yeah,
often
in fact, I was going to turn it over now to questions, because I've said everything that I had intended to say. So let's find out where I was not clear. Okay.
Well, there's just one question from Chris. How often do you get a long and short signal on the same day?
Actually, not often. This situation with the euro is kind of bizarre, actually, that we got the short signal. Well, actually, we got the long one first, because these Aramir pages have the most recent posting at the top. The long signal was first. 15 minutes into the play last night, and this was actually not just a signal, it was a mistake on my part. I overlooked a factor in my determination that told me, oh man, I'm supposed to be short, not long. And that's why we posted this update around 6:30, I guess, give or take. And I mean, that's going to happen as often as I make a mistake, I guess. And I try to minimize all of that. And sometimes I may even make a mistake and not realize it. If I hadn't realized it last night, I would have been sweating bullets as it kept coming down, coming down, coming down. But my entry right at the open, I put my entry on this at with 1453 as my stop. And it didn't sit well with me, and that's what caused me to go back and look at my determinations again and realize that I had overlooked a factor. But if I had not done that, my stop at 1453 would not have been hit, and I would have been taking my exits off of these numbers if we get to them. If not, end of day 4 o'clock, it's just market MOC type of exit. But those were my original targets. And if I had not caught my error, that's what I would be targeting from then. I don't even know where we are now. Actually, it's come back down. So we may not get there today. But again, this was the correct and official night owl determination. I hope I answered your question. There are instances where night owl will recognize a reversal during the day. As a practical matter, I don't put those out there too often, simply because by the time they occur, I usually have to, I've usually begun preparing the next day's determinations, because each market takes around 2 to 3 hours to do. And sometimes there are complexities like crude oil on Christmas Day, where it took over 4 hours to determine the short side for crude oil for today. And that's just a fact of life I have to deal with, that I'm only one person, and night owl is still mostly manually determined. There was an individual who was supposed to program it. It never got done, and so I'm still working with the manual determinations. So as a practical matter, I don't always have the time to put the reversal out there, because I'm not even aware it has happened, because I'm already into the next day's determination. Luckily, that doesn't happen often.
Okay, just a couple more quickies. Peter asked, what account size is recommended to trade the 3-lot trades that you generally discuss?
I would say $50,000 if you're going to trade both markets. And I highly recommend trading both markets, because you've got 21 trading days in a typical month. And in those 21 days, there will typically be 8 to 10 of those 21 days where night owl does not have a recommendation for one market or the other. In other words, it cannot determine which is the higher percentage side to play, and so it'll just stay on the sideline. So if you play each market, you've got a much higher chance of having a play every day or nearly every day. Because almost always when euro doesn't have a play, crude oil does, or vice versa. And that's why, you know, when we price the subscriptions like we do, for one market, it's whatever it is. I think it's $300 a month. For the second market, it's only an extra $100. We're not doubling it, because it just makes sense for that small amount of additional money to have the ability to play a trade every day.
Okay, and then that kind of is a lead into Ken's question. Do you still plan to offer this as auto trade service? And this is maybe where Dan can also add his 2 cents.
That was the short answer is yes. That was the reason that we put the account at Striker. Because after all, we could have put Striker is the firm that Dan Neenan is from. And I understand from Tom, he's in the audience, because I can't see the audience. But that was the reason that we decided to put the official Night Owl account at Striker, because by having it at Striker, the idea is that I will be trading the official Night Owl account. I've got it on the simulator right now, and it's really ready to go now in the live account. And again, Dan, please don't go away, because I have a question for you at the very end. So the idea is, when I take the trade and the accounts at Striker are linked to the Night Owl account that I'm trading, then your account will reflect the same trades, the same entries, the same exits, the same targets that I'm working with here. So yes, that's definitely the case. And again, does Dan have a microphone? Does he have the ability to speak?
He does. Let me unmute him.
Okay. Dan, you can address exactly what a client of Striker would need to do to hook themselves up to Night Owl like that, because that's your area. I don't know what the step-by-step process is.
Looks like he's still muted. I can't unmute him, so maybe he doesn't have the ability to talk right now.
Okay,
we did have one more question too while we're
perhaps
waiting.
I mean, after all.
Can you clarify how the percentage returns quoted on the sign-up page are calculated? Is this against the margin of the trades or some notional account size?
It's based on that was a real money account. It began at $50,000. So that was actual trading. I've traded. I'm sorry, Tom. You.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's not the Dan from Striker. It's a different Dan. There's a Dan N in our community. So sorry about that.
Okay. Well, I believe I can put my fingers very quickly on contact information for Strike. Let me see where I have that. And we'll put the phone number out there, and you can call Dan Neenan, Neenan. He is our contact. Let's see. I guess.
Well, and here's the website, striker.com.
Do you have the ability to type that in?
I put it in the chat. Yep.
Okay, because I don't see it, but again, I'm not familiar with this platform. So you've got the information in front of you. Go to the Striker website, striker.com. You can either call for William Galwis. William and I go back all the way to 1998. Dan Neenan is the day-to-day guy. He's the one who will administer the accounts, get you set up, get you hooked up to Night Owl and so forth. Again, Dan Neenan, Neenan. I believe his name is on the site, but I don't have that in front of me.
Yeah, I just put the Striker phone numbers on there just to make it easier for people.
Sure. Yeah, they have an 800 number, but I guess that doesn't matter anymore. You can call any number without paying a toll nowadays.
And then I guess we're getting close to wrapping it up because we're a little over an hour, and I like to wrap these up to an hour. But Mark, you had an offer for people on the website now, or on the webinar,
yes,
for a little extra time.
Indeed, and I'm glad you mentioned that because it's out there, and I should devote a minute or two to talking about that. We're encouraging people to enroll in Night Owl because Night Owl has this high accuracy percentage, and it has a play nearly every day. If you follow my recommendation of a moment ago, and you're playing, let's say, a 3-lot on the @ sign, and you're targeting B, D, and E above, your reward to risk is a little bit better than 1-to-1 because your stop is going to be down here on line number 6, or correction, line number 7, 6 lines below the @ So on a typical setup, you're risking $1,200 to $1,300 with your 3 lots. And if you're targeting these 3 numbers as your profit targets, you're targeting $1,500 to $1,600. So you've got slightly better than a 1-to-1 reward to risk ratio. And given that the accuracy of Night Owl is a little in excess of 75%, close to 80%, 3 times out of 4 trades overall, you're going to get your win and 1 time your loss. And with your average win above your maximum loss, your expected return is positive. So we're trying to encourage Aramir members to take advantage of this by enrolling in the Night Owl service. And so to put a carrot out there to entice, or at least to attract the attention of Aramir members, if you will enroll for a quarterly subscription, we'll add on an extra month. If you enroll in a monthly subscription, we'll add on an extra week. Now that offer is only good through the close of trading on Friday, the day after tomorrow. So between now and then, sign up for Night Owl and get your extra month on a quarterly subscription or your extra week on a monthly subscription.
And you don't need to do anything for that. I'll see the subscriptions and automatically just adjust the billing cycle to give you the free time.
Yeah, that's the idea. So I strongly encourage you to take advantage of it. Since we moved Night Owl over to Aramir, it has made 22 correct calls out of 28. So we've got more than 22 wins in fewer than 2 months. We began this at the end of October, and bear in mind I was offline for 2 weeks moving. So we've basically got 22 wins out of 28 calls in roughly a 6-week period of time. So the numbers are definitely there, folks. And I strongly encourage you to get on this train because we're doing well, and we don't want you to miss it.
That's right, and if you do it before the 31st, you can also write it off on this year's taxes as well. So,
well, yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, I didn't put that out there, but yeah, sure, of course.
And just so people are clear, I did open up a $50,000 account at Striker, and Mark's going to trade it to generate a trading record, a current trading record with live trades. So I guess, Mark, you're going to start those pretty soon, I would imagine, right?
That was the reason I was wanting to talk to Dan, thinking that the Dan in the group today was Dan Neenan from Striker, because what I need to get from him are the sign-in credentials.
Okay, so but
it
it's very, very close to starting.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be it certainly should be by the end of this week, and it takes 2 to 3 days to open an account anyway. So it's not like anybody is missing anything yet.
Right.
If you're going to take advantage of this offer, act quickly. The discount, the additional time offer is good through the close of trading on Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern time on Friday. So between now and then, enroll in Night Owl and at least contact Striker to get your account set up, get that ball rolling, because I imagine they need 2 or 3 days to get it through.
Yeah, it takes a few days. They got to fill all the forms out, then they have to provision it and give you the logins and all that. So it takes a little bit.
Yeah, of course. So you've got that little bit of time, but take advantage of it before the year end. As Tom pointed out, you've also got the ability to deduct this off your taxes if you do that also. So with that, if there are no more questions, I guess I should ask that first. If there are any more questions, let's go. But go with them. But otherwise, that's everything I had intended to cover today.
Very good, Mark. Well, I really love the Night Owl. I like that it's flat every day, and you know, my wife, when I told her that, she's like, "Oh, really?" So,
well, I think what we have to emphasize, and I recognize those of you in the Aramir group, for the most part, joined Aramir because you're options traders. And I began my career in trading back in the middle 90s, and I was an options trader. I started trading OEX options and migrated over to futures by the late 90s and have been trading futures ever since. But the point I wanted to make is this. With your options trade, I imagine in the various services that you're using here at Aramir, you may get, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 recommendations a month, perhaps. Compare that to what Night Owl is offering you. And this is not meant in any way as a slam against anybody else here. It's just that Night Owl is different in the sense that every single day it's making its determinations. Is there a play or is there not a play? And between the two markets, crude oil and euro, there almost always is a play in at least one of them. Today we had plays in both of them. So if you subscribe to each market, out of those 21 trading days per month, you're very likely to have 19 or 20 plays. Every single day, it's flat. Some days it will be long, some days it will be short. So, and Night Owl with its 75 to 80% real money accuracy, and I'm going to emphasize real money accuracy. This is not hypothetical back testing or simulation. This is what it actually has done. With that kind of accuracy, you're getting the moves that markets are making, because of course markets rarely go in straight lines. You're going to have up days, down days, up days 2 or 3 days in a row, and a down day every once in a while, or vice versa. Night Owl is configured to identify those turns so that it gets it right almost 4 times out of 5 and is giving you those opportunities on a daily basis. So for that reason, if no other reason, I encourage you to include Night Owl in your trading arsenal.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. I think that's the last roundtable for the year. Thank you, Mark. Hope everybody takes advantage of your offer. It's a really great one. And yeah, we'll keep everybody updated on how the live account is going at Striker. And if anybody has any questions, they can contact you at nightowl@aramir.com. And
that's right.
We'd be happy to answer them.
That's absolutely right. I put that every day in the post as well.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Have a great slide into the new year, as they say in Germany. And we'll see you all next year.
Thank you all for attending. I'm glad you came.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
Sure. Bye now.